Okay, this meeting is being recorded. If anyone does not want to be recorded, please either do not speak or leave the session. Okay. This is the PMP prep seminar, and we're going to be talking about starting the project part 2 today. Now, we've got a number of slides to go through, and I'm going to be presenting. I'm Harry Dosher. I'm a senior Agile coach in the Agile Center of Excellence, and my cohort today is Veronica Garland. Veronica, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hey there. My name is Veronica Garland. As Harry mentioned, I am a principal product development engineer in the NEO organization. I sat in your seat 2 years ago, so I am freshly PMP'd. I took the test in 2019, so I am very excited to participate here with Harry.
Thanks, Veronica. And just a little background, Veronica and I we attempted to put together a slide deck for this new exam. We were not given the exam or really any of the contents. And what it's evolved into is that PMI is providing all of the material, the slide decks, any of the PDF files. And as I understand, once you've paid the fee and PMI gets the fee, you're then enabled to go to the PMI website and download the PDF versions of the slide decks. Okay. So I wanted to touch base just a little bit today on the differences in the test. This is completely revamped. Between people and business environment is 50% of the test, and process takes up the other 50%. Now, one thing that is really different is here in bold. Remember this, about half of the exam will represent predictive project management approaches, which are the ones that we've traditionally done, such as waterfall. And the other half will represent agile or hybrid approaches. It could be rapid development, it could be Scrum, number of agile approaches there. So, and they're going to be mixed up. You're going to see predictive and agile questions in the same domain or task that they're talking about. Now, if you go to the PMI website, you can download this. This is the exam content outline document. So it's at pmi.org. And if you access the PMP credentials tab, you'll get to here. Now, it's broken up into domains, tasks, and enablers. So we've got the 3 domains are people, process, and business environment. The tasks are listed here, like manage conflict, and then enablers will be subordinate to the tasks. And you'll see in the outline, and this is a good thing to have, okay? Okay, so you have domain 1, people. Task 1, manage conflict. This is A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3 here. Okay. When you take a look at the slide deck, you're going to see listed ECO tasks 2.5 and 2.6 for what we're going to cover today. So. Domain 2, 2.5, plan and manage budget. and resources. And 6, plan and manage schedule. Okay? That's what we're going to be covering today. And it's all in the outline. The outline indicates areas that you need to study. Going through the slide deck will definitely not prepare you at all for the exam. These are areas you need to concentrate in and do more research on. The suggested reading list is good. Any of your PMP prep courses or books like Mulcahy or Crow will have the information in that you need to be studying. And definitely know both the PMBOK guide and the Agile guide from PMI. If you're a PMI member, you can get a soft copy of each with no additional charge. If you're not a PMI member, you can buy a copy at Amazon or through PMI. And it's fairly hefty price from what I've seen, $50, $60 each. So I'll put in the plug for being a PMI member if you want a discount on the exam costs and any of the other like books or seminars that they have. It's good to have that membership. Okay. Any questions on this? All right, the crickets are back. Now, let's get into the slides. Okay. So we're going to talk about starting the project. This is the second, I believe, of 4 sessions on starting the project. And here, we're going to plan and manage the budget and the resources, and also plan and manage the schedule. Now, remember, ECO tasks 2.5 and 2.6 here. So the lesson objectives are to be able to plan and manage the budget and resources, and this will be covered in ECO task 2.5. Then also plan, prepare, modify, and manage the project schedule, based on methodology. So project schedule looks different for a classic project as opposed to an agile project. All right. So these are the 4 items underneath 2.5 that we're going to talk about. Talk about budget estimates, anticipating future budget challenges, monitoring budget variations, and working within a governance process, and also plan and manage resources. Deliverables that we're going to be dealing with are a cost baseline that we'll put together from estimates, a management reserve, which makes sure that we're not going to be spending every dollar in the budget. It's held back. It's a holdback that the leadership of the project would have control over. Also, the resource management plan: when are we going to need people? When are we going to need machinery? When are we going to need, exactly what we'll need and when. Change requests. Now, change requests you're going to see mostly on the classic projects. Change requests within an agile development domain are going to really be eliminated in most cases, and what will be done is, like, a product owner will have the ability to prioritize a backlog. So you need to know about those terms too, product owner, backlog, and how you would change things. So that under an agile project, the product owner has a lot more authority and ability to change things than in a classic project. We also will be putting together cost forecasts so that we'll take a look further down the line and try to anticipate when we're going to need maybe additional funding or when we're going to be spending the most of the funding. And also risk analysis. We need to identify and decide on how we're going to handle each risk that comes up. Okay, you're going to have some tools. There'll be some estimating techniques that you use. There's 3-point estimating, and we can get into these a little bit later. But 3-point is optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely. Take and average those. Analogous means that you've got another project or part of a project that is similar to what you're trying to estimate. And so you can look back in history and see where you can get an idea of how long it's going to take. Now, naturally, any of these techniques, you've got to take into consideration the team that's going to be implementing the work products. Okay, so that if you've got a brand new team that's never done any of this work, it's probably going to take a little bit longer than a team that's been doing things such as this for several years and has stayed intact. Yeah. So these estimates always need to be. You have to be aware of that when doing the estimates. Parametric and analogous are pretty close, but parametric uses equivalent units that the previous project is used. So parametric when you see parametric, you're always going to see some finite number of units associated with it. That's a good thing to keep in mind. T-shirt sizing is just however you have to go from extra small to 5 extra large or whatever for the size of the deliverables, such as a feature or a user story. Planning poker is it's not as fun as it sounds. What you do is each person who's working on the planning has a deck of cards that it's a modified Fibonacci sequence, so that you go from 1 to 2, excuse me, to 5 units and above that. And each person just plays the card that they feel best represents the magnitude of the work that has to be done. You're going to be able to review organizational data, which means if previous project managers have kept a good project plan and additional documentation such as risks, any of their forecasts, things like that. You want to be able to go into the archives and see if there are any analogous projects. Now, naturally, you're going to have meetings. Meetings are going to be can be both customer facing and development team facing. So as a project manager, you're in between. You're representing the development teams to the customer and the customer to the development teams. To be able to leverage PMIS, And, well, change control, understanding change control is going to, as I said before, depend on the project, whether it's a classic project or whether it's an agile project. How your change control is spec'd out for your particular team that's going to be working on this, and depending on the development type it is. Use of velocity data and analysis. This is especially true in agile projects where velocity is a representation of how much work can get done within an iteration, or ideally in a 2-week period of time. What you want to do is track that and make sure that your Scrum teams aren't signing up for very much more than their historical capabilities have been. Throughput analysis, that you can consider this to be either throughput into and out of the system, or taking a look at the various stages or the various interfaces that have to be achieved between subsystems when you're delivering, say, a software product. So if you've got 10 systems that it has to pass through, like you usually have to do at AT&T, that you understand where any of the delays are and exactly what's causing the delays. Any of the cost variance, predicted versus actual, and then features accepted versus features remaining. You'll hear terms like burn up or burn down charts. These are usually associated with agile projects. So all it means is a graphical representation of how many features have been accepted versus how many features are supposed to be delivered within that, say, program increment, which would be 5 sprints, 5 iterations. Okay. So burn up, you'll see a gradual increase. Burn down, you're going to see just the opposite. So as you burn down the number of features that you have to deliver. So cost estimates include developing an approximation of the cost for each activity in a project. And know this list. Costs need to include direct labor, materials, the equipment, facilities, services, information technology, contingency reserves, and any indirect costs, among others. So do a little bit of digging into here. Back when I was a young pup starting out, I worked for a different company, and we had a real focus on direct cost of materials whenever we produced a product. And these are standalone products. So that at the time, we didn't have too much memory available or anything. So they reduced the amount of RAM and the amount of EEPROM, believe it, to the point where we had to spend a huge amount of time programming around it. But the direct labor rate at that point in time was much less than the direct material rate that we had for the overall costing of the product. They were discounting direct labor. They were taking direct materials at the run rate. So you have to understand what the relationships are between these. If it's going to cost you a huge amount of money for storage, once you've, for either your incoming raw materials or your outgoing finished product, know that. Where does IT fit in? And you've got to be able to bundle that cost in. And like at AT&T, when we were hot and heavy in the data centers, if you needed to add a machine to the data center, the cost to do that, and this was including all these types of contingencies here, the cost for doing it was approximately 5 times the purchase price of the actual computer itself. So, some companies like AT&T for the data centers have a certain weighting factor for these things. Others don't. You have to figure it out for each particular project. And then logical estimates provide the basis for making sound decisions, and they establish baselines. So what we're trying to do is get a well-educated guess of what it's going to cost to produce this product or service. Okay? And that'll become our baseline. We'll measure things in variation from the baseline. So you're talking about estimating techniques. The 3 that they list here are analogous, bottom-up, and parametric estimating. The advantages and disadvantages of each. The advantage of analogous estimating is that you can ensure no work is inadvertently omitted from the work estimates, because ideally you have a complete record of an analogous project that would list everything that went into the estimates. Now, disadvantage of analogous estimating is that sometimes it can be difficult for lower level managers or people with responsibility for estimating to apportion cost estimates. So does it go against direct labor? Does it go against contingency reserve? Exactly how you break it up. For bottom-up estimating, bottom-up is very accurate. It gives people who are most involved with the effort the responsibility and the ability to provide the estimates. The disadvantage is it can be very time-consuming and can be used only after the WBS has been well-defined. WBS is work breakdown structure, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But it's really a detailing of all of the tasks that go into producing this product. What they're saying is that a good bottom-up estimation needs to have the WBS set so that the teams are formed and those team members are the ones doing the estimation. Okay.
And that's after the teams are formed?
I'm sorry, can you say again, please?
Did you say that that's after the teams are formed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can. Well, you establish the work breakdown structure, okay, which details what has to be done. You then assign teams to that particular list of activities. So once you've done that, you can then get the bottom-up estimate
Okay.
from those teams.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. And that's why they say that it can be very time consuming. Because you know that at least at AT&T, we always have all the teams set to go from day one of the project being kicked off, right? Yeah. Okay. So the last one is parametric estimations. They're not time consuming, which is an advantage. These are based on analogous projects, how long it took to do specific things, or what the unit of effort, being able to size based on unit of effort. So they may be inaccurate. They're really dependent upon the historic data that you have. So if you've got a really rich set of estimates from before, from previous projects, you're better off than most people because, unfortunately, usually not everything's captured. So in order for this to be accurate, you need to have good historic data. These are other types of estimation types. Definitive estimates, rough order of magnitude, in-phase estimate. And filter that down to the project cost. But if you take a look, understand and remember which ones are which. So definitive estimate accuracy is -5% to about +10%. But a rough order of magnitude, you're looking at -25 to 75% accurate. Okay. So remember which is which here. Rough order of magnitude, the accuracy is less. Definitive estimate, the accuracy is much tighter. So we're going to talk about governance. It's really managing project phases when we talk about cost estimates. There's other governance that can be, especially if you're doing a government project, just making sure that everything, all of the contingencies are satisfied. How things are stored, who can access materials, things like that. But we're going to talk about we're talking about cost estimates, so we'll restrict it to that. So one thing to remember, different type of cost estimate and level of accuracy may be required for different phases of the project life cycle. So as we get closer and closer to the finish, usually your estimates better be pretty accurate because you've got the history of development for that project. Plus, the teams have gotten at least some experience working on it for some period of time. So you want to consider the following when you're choosing an estimating method. The availability of any software that would allow you to do the estimates easier. Team member experience. Have people been through this before? Do they understand how to do the estimates? Have they been accurate on estimates in the past too? Which project life cycle phase you're in, whether you're initiating a project where you are still trying to nail down some of the requirements so that you're going to have most likely a much less accurate estimate at that point, as opposed to, like I say, when you're trying to close, when you're reaching the point where you're about to close down the project, should have pretty tight estimates at that point. Any time constraints that you have, when do you have to produce the estimate? Do you have to give it to your supervisor later the same day, the next day, whatever, 2 weeks from now? Now, that's going to determine what type of estimating technique you can use. How the project is defined. Is it defined as an agile project? Is it defined as a waterfall project? Take a look at any of those definitions and use the appropriate technique. An agile estimate, you're looking at estimating 2-week increments. Then you're talking about 10 to 12-week program increments. So that's different from a waterfall project where you're estimating requirements, design, development, testing. Okay. So each of those phases is included in an agile project for each of the iterations. And then if you've got experience or you've had success with a particular estimating technique, then go for it. If you can use it, more power to you. The lessons learned register. We always maintain those pretty well. All it is a repository that lists the lessons learned for every project that has been done by that organization. Okay. What you want to be able to do is take the experience from a previous project and apply it to the estimates for later projects. I mean, both estimates and risk analysis. Okay. Statement of the obvious, experience from previous projects is an important component in budgeting. So if a project, multiple projects especially, kept getting surprised by increased costs in a particular phase of the project, I want to dive into that, find out why, and avoid that for your own project. Okay. Then lessons learned registers contain valuable cost estimating information, both successes and shortcomings. So you should have within the lessons learned register what worked, what didn't work. And there should be a section in there about the cost estimates. So that if you're in project initiation, if you're initiating the project, find out how accurate the estimates were, why did they work, things like that, and see if you can apply that to your current project. Guidelines to estimating costs. This is if you're doing bottom-up. You would gather the cost figures that go into cost estimates for individual work packages, and a work package is associated with a leaf in a work breakdown structure. Check with the resource supplier to make sure no inaccurate assumptions have been made. Now, yeah, some may slip through, either because of it could be just ignorance on the part of both the previous project manager and the current one. You gather any relevant input information that would help prepare the estimates. Any old invoices, any previous, monetary releases or payments by finance, things like that. So I give you an idea how much you're going to be spending. You need to determine which estimating technique to use. We just covered that. Look for alternative costing options. If you're planning on building something, would it be more cost effective to buy it? Okay. Would it be more cost effective to have contractors develop it than direct employees? Those are the types of questions you look at there. Determine the units of measure that will be used. Is it furlongs per fortnight? Is it feature points per week? Is it user stories per iteration? Does it exactly what's going to be used and how you're going to measure it? And if you're trying to pull something out of the archives to compare it against, make sure that you're able to either use the same units or have a direct conversion between the units. And always consider any possible risks that you can think of that could impact costs. If you're building a road, what would happen if you had a hurricane come through? Things like that. Okay. Ensure that all cost estimates are assigned to the appropriate account. I mean, around AT&T, you'll mostly hear about enhancing and sustaining costs. So you really, and this is mostly for finance too, because by the accounting rules, AT&T is able to write off a certain percentage of costs if they're the right costs. And the project doesn't work, gets abandoned, you can recoup some of the development costs for any of the capital expenditures. So make sure that you're really taking a look at where the costs are being assigned. Okay, and make sure that the estimates include costs for resources or people, buildings. Remember, we had that whole list. Okay, a level of estimate. Is it optimistic, pessimistic, usual, and a list of assumptions that you've made in order to come up with the estimates. Assuming that there's a direct linear scale from a previous project, here's what our estimates are based on that, something like that. Any of your assumptions. Or that, again, if you're building a road, assuming that the price of gravel will stay flat from the beginning of the project through the end of the project. Things like that. I don't have anything else on estimating project costs here, but we can talk about budget estimates. And, estimating the project budget consists of aggregating the estimated costs of individual activities or work packages. Remember, work packages tie back to a work breakdown structure. Okay, to establish an authorized cost baseline. What you're doing is you're putting together estimates. Okay. So if you say you can do that project in under $1 million, you want to document that, and you'd use that as your baseline. Okay. And then measure any deviations from that baseline. You need to make sure that the budget contains all the funding needed to complete the project as defined in the scope baseline and the project schedule. Now, AT&T has a habit of a portion dribbling out the funds for projects. So be aware of that too. We've moved to a different budgeting technique when working with agile and safe efforts. It really requires a fairly consistent number of people working on delivering value or features over an extended period of time, say a year, so that you really fund the people that are working rather than funding the project effort itself. Okay? Because when they're done working on this project, they should have some more work in the backlog that they could pull on. Okay? Project cost performance is then measured against the cost baseline. Okay? As we said, baseline is baseline, and you measure any of the deviations. Okay. This illustrates the cost baseline. Okay. I'll read the definition. The approved version of the time-phased project budget, excluding any management reserves, and you'll see management reserves up here at the top, okay, which can be changed only through formal change control procedures, and is used as a basis for comparison to actual results. Okay. So that saying is, with this type of development, you've got to exclude the management reserve, and then be aware that you have a formal change control process that has to be adhered to in order to keep the cost of making those changes lower. You also have to be aware of a time-phased budget. This is where you receive funds at certain periods of time, like illustrated here, funding requirement, oh. And that's like 90% of the job done. You're looking for funding. Let's see, time-phased budget monitors and measures cost performance. What we want to see is, here's your baseline, and at this point, your expenditures have not caught up to your estimates. Now, if you see up here, there's a point where your expenditures actually will be ahead of your cost baseline. Okay. It's like fourth quarter, 1 minute left in the game. Okay. Need to include a budget contingency, just in case you need immediate access to cash. That can be either arranged with finance, or you can just be told, heck no, we don't do that type of work. And your cost baseline is going to vary from project to project. Remember what we talked about, the maturity and composition of the teams that are going to be delivering the project itself. How long they're going to take, what are they going to take to deliver each incremental piece of value on that project. Okay, know the guidelines here for establishing, for estimating the cost baseline. Gathering the inputs you will need, such as the WBS, project schedule, the cost estimates, and the risk management plan. Okay. Use the project schedule to determine when activities will take place. You can see when the development team had originally scheduled these things. Use one of the methods for assigning costs to allocate funds for each activity or work package for the time period in which it will take place. The alternative is alternative is to have the funding in place for the total number of people for a period of time. And more projects are moving toward that funding model. And you should consider asking for a contingency reserve to accommodate the risk of incurring extra expenses, just so you don't have to go back to finance for more funding. If you can set up a reserve so that you can take care of at least small to medium costs. And also avoid adding contingency reserves for small one-time minuscule amounts. Something that's okay. Total the costs for each time period. Plot the costs for each period on a chart to create an S-curve of the baseline, and we'll see that in an example later on. Publish and distribute the cost baseline to the appropriate project stakeholders. And this is everybody who's primarily involved with the project itself. Okay. The project budgeting components, the overall total project budget is composed of the cost baseline plus management reserve. Okay. You then have control accounts so that you're going to be assigning the work to one of the appropriate accounts. So you'll have a contingency reserve just in case some additional work has to be done or has to be reworked, and then work package cost estimates. And again, the work package is being tied to the work breakdown structure. And then you have contingency reserve and for each of the activities, and then the activity cost estimates. Okay. There are some budget challenges. Yeah, ideally, budget is set during project planning and does not change. That happens once in a blue moon. Most of the time, you're going to see that a budget is set and the estimates aren't 100% accurate. So you either are able to give money back to finance or to the department that is providing for the work, or it's going to change, based on things that come up that you really didn't anticipate. Projects do not exist in a perfect world. Following can pose a challenge to the project manager. New or changed project requirements, new risks or changes to the probabilities of or impacts of existing risks. And if you start getting hurricanes coming through a particular area and you're building a road in that area, be aware of that. Okay? Changes to cost estimates resulting from economic factors, procurement contracts, modifications, change resource costs, etc. Economic factors can be, if you're working internationally, can be the exchange rates, determining what currency you're going to be working with. Okay, whether or not the government is spending on infrastructure projects, things like that.
I have a question about the budget challenges. Under the section where it says projects do not exist in a perfect world, where it says new or change project requirements, does that primarily affect if you're doing a waterfall project versus Agile, since Agile seems a lot more flexible when it comes to changes? Yeah,
it is. Waterfall is a much harder to deal with. You have to go through a change control process. for any of the changes that are requested. With an Agile project, you may be able to accommodate that at the team level, where you'd have a product owner who would naturally be aware of what the change requirements are, what the impact is to the development team itself, and the relative priority to the rest of the tasks that they have to do. So yeah, it's easier to deal with for an Agile project. I'd agree with you on that. Okay. Okay. Now, if you have any of these things occurring up here, change requirements or new requirements, impacts changing, cost estimates changing, one or more of the following must change: project budget, project cost, project schedule, or the scope of the project itself. Okay. So you can't have everything. If the customer wants a major change to be done, that's fine. You can usually accommodate it, but something's got to give. Either the schedule has to be stretched out. You may need to pay for additional people to implement it. The changes requested. Can we get some more budget for this project? And then what may need to be trimmed back is the scope. If you're not able to.
Question for me is when a customer is asking for a change of some type, wouldn't that change the triple constraints? And so because of that, wouldn't you have to be able to go through the change management process as far as, making sure that the project is on time, within budget, and so on and so forth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just be aware that the change control process can vary based on the development method that you're using. That's what you need to be aware of.
And Harry, there was one question. I'm sorry. Yeah. There was another question in the chat that was asking whether there was some type of formula that can be used to calculate the baseline cost for theory. And I think on the slide before this, it breaks down what the baseline cost consists of. So basically, it's your contingency reserve plus your, I think the one before that, plus the contingency plus the work package cost estimate. Is that what you were asking, William? Okay. Well, just chime back in, and if you still have a question about what the formula is that's used to calculate the baseline cost.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Oh, that is me. Hold on. There we go. Okay. All right. So we were at this point before. So it's more than just, it's more than triple constraint these days. It's budget, cost, schedule, scope, and things like disruptors. Okay, something has to give. Okay. So, statement of the obvious: if the budget remains fixed and additional funds are not available, then something has to change. The project itself must change. Okay. The amount of work that can be done has to change, or yeah, that's basically it. What you can deliver. talk about funding limit reconciliation. This is the process of comparing the planned expenditure of project funds against any limits on the commitments of funds for the project to identify any variances between the funding limits and the planned expenditures. And basically, what you're going to want to be doing is monitoring along the way, for the life of the project, what the original budget estimate was and what you've charged to date. Okay. Be aware that most budgets assume steady incoming and outgoing flows, so that you're not looking at spikes of incoming cash or outgoing cash. The large sporadic expenditures are usually incompatible with organizational operations. You don't want there to be spikes in there. You want to be able to handle things in a controlled manner. Okay. And then funding limits help regulate the outgoing capital flow to protect against overspending. So that's really why you're doing this, is to keep the amount of money that's being spent in line. And for those of you who been here for a number of years, we have had some times where you really get cut off from capital funding late in the year because the spend rate's too high, and we generally end up having stopped projects for a particular period of time and then starting them back up after the new year. So just realize this is going to depend on what your governance is, what finance says, and what you as a project manager are responsible for. And some guidelines to anticipate future budget challenges. Keep the stakeholder register current. That's with any of the project documentation, just to make sure that the right people get the right information, and people who are no longer associated with the project do not get the updates. Make sure that your stakeholder register is current, and be aware of changes to project requirements if new stakeholders are added to the project. So if you remove some, add others, just be sure you account for that in your estimates. Your baseline may need to change. So you want to monitor risks frequently to look for new risks and changes to existing ones. You'll want to, once you're able to, monitor the performance of suppliers and vendors, naturally. And the way that you can monitor can vary from supplier to supplier, vendor to vendor, and may include such contingencies as being able to monitor the performance at the supplier site, or a neutral third-party site, or on the premises of the machinery or the whatever's being changed. Okay. Need to monitor all changes to the project and follow the change management system. Try to keep them within budget, and I'll keep harping on this. Change management systems are going to vary between waterfall and agile projects. Okay. Yep. Okay. Guidelines to determine the budget. always review the cost management plan, human resource management plan, scope baseline, the work breakdown structure, and the work breakdown structure dictionary. Check the project schedule. Hopefully, you've done a good job in estimating when resources are going to be needed, how many resources are going to be needed, and for how long the resources are going to be needed. Okay. Reviewing the risk register to consider any risks that may impact cost estimation. If something increases the time to market of the product, you'd need to understand what that means too. Reviewing all the internal documentation, using appropriate tools and techniques when you're putting the budget together. Establish your cost baseline. Then understand what the project funding requirements are, or the cash flow that's required to enable the project, and whether or not that's just enabling it to start, whether it's full funding for the duration of the project, and it has to be done within the current 12-week period, exactly where it comes. And then update project documents as needed. Yep. All right. We were talking about the cost baseline. Here are a couple of tools that we can use. And this is estimation by week for having an event, hosting an event. Yeah. Everything from conducting the planning meetings to arranging for the location of this particular event. What it's going to take to arrange all the staffing, to publicize the event, and then to hold the event itself. As you can see, these are the number of people required and when they're required. This is the cost for these people, okay? And then just the total of how much it's going to be. Now, this is a cumulative documentation here. So,
hey, Harry, on this one, I have a question for the group, because I know we have this in the presentation slide, but in the participant slide, do you guys have this activity in your documentation in the exam prep workbook to work through the actual activity on your own? This is my first time going through this new deck, and I saw this in there and just assumed that maybe the students had a separate document that set up the activity and you guys had to go in and fill out the chart. Anyone? Okay.
All right. So this is the cumulative number of people or resources required. So the total is 33 over a 10-month period. And when you roll people off, you see the blanks appearing then.
Sorry, Veronica, I was on mute earlier. That activity is in there. It doesn't have the values filled out in the week section. But yeah, that's activity in our student guide. Activity 2-4.
Okay. So have you guys been doing the activities before class and going through the solution, or what's the preference for you guys?
There hasn't been a consistent method. I know Terry last week actually went through each of the questions that were in our activities and engaged some of the participants, some of the students to answer some of those questions, which I personally found was pretty helpful. But there's also some that will take these activities and work through them in their mentor groups. So there's lots of different ways it can be addressed.
Okay, so I'm not sure if we have a copy of that activity then, Harry. So
No,
yeah, I think we can share the solution afterwards, but and just urge everyone to work through any questions in their mentoring group, and then we can circle back with Brian and make sure that all the instructors have access to that same activity book.
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds like a plan. Okay. This is the other one. And then last couple of slides here. Learning goals are to assess project needs, complexity, and magnitude, and determine the appropriate project methodology and methods to use in practices. Plan and manage the scope. Plan and manage the budget and resources. Plan, prepare, modify, and manage the project schedule based on the methodology. Plan and manage the quality of products and deliverables. Integrate project planning activities. Plan and manage procurement strategy if you've got third parties involved. Establish the project governance structure. And plan and manage the project phase closure. Okay, so I suggest knowing these things. Okay. And then, since you've got so much free time, a couple of reflective questions. Why do you think developing project and scope management plan is important? And actually, I'd suggest writing your responses just in a notebook or on a handheld device, whatever. Put it in a Word document. Okay. Why do you think it's important to collect requirements, define scope, and create a work breakdown structure? Okay. And that brings us to the end of the slide deck today. Remember that remember to consider the exam outline. Figure out where this fits in. Tasks 5 and 6. So I'll take any questions at this point.
I'll just, while folks are maybe getting off of me or thinking of follow-up questions, I'll just add a few points too. So, you know, as you're going through your studying process, just be sure, as I think Harry mentioned and he's showing here, to compare what you're studying with the PMP outline, course outline. So I think when I went into it, I had the misunderstanding thinking that the PMP exam was going to test the PMBOK, but that's far from the truth. You know, some of these items and phrases that you probably heard in the presentation today, you won't find those same topics in the PMBOK. So you really have to use all the different avenues. So you'll take some pieces from the PMBOK, some pieces from those support documentation like the read a book and so forth, some information from, the PMP outline here and add all of that to your study plan to ensure that you have a full understanding. Definitely the PMBOK doesn't have Agile really in it. So then you have to look at the manifesto and some other resources or pull from your own projects that you might have. So just please consider that when you are planning out your overall study plan going into it. Again, going through this, picking out, common words or ideas and so forth, and really taking that into account and studying on that, because I'm sure you've heard other instructors say a lot of the PMP exam is, situational questions. So you might have a situational or a long paragraph talking about how a leader created or calculated their estimates and what they used to come up with their estimates. And then you have to understand, okay, did they use analogous? Did they use bottom up? So you're going to have to figure out what those main topics are, what those main areas are, and factor that into your studying, because it really is a lot of situational where they are outlining certain situations and scenarios, and then you have to figure out what the best answer is.
So can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So are we going to go over, we had that graph before, and so are we going to go over how we're figuring that out in this class, or is that up to us to kind of go through the documentation and figure it out? What is it that, I'm just curious, because going through the reading and everything, I just want to make sure I'm on the right track. That's all.
Which graph?
Well, so the question there for question 3, where we did the weekly cost estimates.
Yeah.
It was on page 81 of our student guide.
Do you want to share?
No, I have it in front of me. I don't have the. I mean, I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I printed it out and I have it. I've been taking notes in it, so I know. Hey.
So was it that chart that we were sharing that had the weeks in it?
Right.
I think
it was in the PowerPoint that was being shared previously.
Yeah, let me see if I can find the.
I mean, I have the solution and everything from the downloads, but what I'm trying to figure out, the solution is great to have, but when I try and look at through the different documents, kind of like, hey, here's how you do it, and then, oh, okay, you got it wrong or you got it right, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I may have found it.
Okay.
Let me share, and let me know whether this is what you guys are looking at. This version has the answers, so I don't know if your version looks similar or different. Does it look something like this? Like, we don't have access to this data file, but it does have a scenario here.
Now, well, no, I have this. Yeah, this is where, But what I'm talking about is go to page 81. Oh no,
Sorry.
The instructor's manual is different. They've got the answers, so it's going to be further down. It's
right
activity 2-4, right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
Okay. No, go back up. Go back down. Right there. Stop.
Yeah. Okay.
Where are we being shown how to figure that out? I missed it and I can't find it.
So I think you're taking it. I don't think there was direct tasks or steps, but you take, or you can surmise it from the bullets above. So, like, for, and I was just looking at it real quickly as well, just trying to figure out how, they got the answers, matching the answer sheet. And so for like that first one, let me find my sheet.
Yeah, I think the point here is we can start looking at this, but we don't know whether we got the right or the wrong answers, and we don't have the answer either. So,
So we have the answers, I think. So if you guys have done it, I think I found the answers. So like the first one says, which estimating technique was used to come up with the $30,000 figure? Is that correct? That's the first answer question.
So do you have all the necessary inputs to establish a cost baseline? Is the first one. And then what cost assignment method will you choose? And then the third one, which is throwing me for a loop, is what are the weekly cost estimates of activities, public meeting? Use the following table. Okay. The first, how am I breaking? My mind is not clicking on how I'm breaking these down.
Which question?
The answer. I was just going to say that
answers.
In the chorus files, the answers are in there that they shared. I'm not sure how you got to those answers, but the answers is in there in the chorus files. I just found it.
Right. No, the answers are there, but I want to know how they got those.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Okay. So I found where you are. So which question did you have the question on?
Number 3.
Number 3, what are the weekly cost estimates?
Yeah, so how am I filling out that table? I need to know how, because for some reason my brain is not clicking on how I'm breaking those down.
So on ours, I'm not sure how they were breaking that down. Hang on, let me find it.
According to the thing, it says, okay, on the first one there, it's, the planning meetings is a 10, but in week 1, 3, I believe it's 3 hours, I guess. Yes, I still have that.
You know what? All right. What you're going to, if you can scroll up just a little bit, Veronica.
I don't think that's me controlling it now.
Oh. Okay.
I think someone took presenting rights.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Here's the public meeting work package. Okay. This is the scenario. You have to make staffing arrangements. You need to establish the contracts for the venue. The location should be selected early in the process, and staffing should happen shortly thereafter. Okay. 5 weeks before the event, the newspaper ad will be placed. Plan meetings will be scheduled over the next 10 weeks. The first meeting will happen to be away, and another in the 4th week. Okay. So these are the parameters that you have to work with. Okay. See, and then if you can scroll down a little bit to the chart, hit right there. Okay.
Right. And so, like, under the scenario, if we're looking at the conduct planning meetings, then it looks like the bullets tell you how to plot them out. So the 4th from the bottom one says planning meetings will be scheduled over the next 10 weeks. That's how the first meeting will happen right away and another in the 4th week. So you have the first one at 3 if you're looking at the answering key, and then the 4th week you have 2. And then it says the remaining meetings will occur at 2-week intervals until the event. So at 2 weeks intervals, that's why you have another number at week 6 and another number at week 8.
Yep.
So it looks like you're taking the scenario and just plotting it in based off of the information that they provided.
Okay. I didn't know.
Hey, Harry, can you show your chart again? I wanted to make a point that I think might be confusing us here. That chart that had all the weeks populated with numbers is the same chart. It just had it filled out.
Okay, so we're not going to walk through on the breakdowns on these type of charts then.
So you may not have enough information there to completely do the exercise.
Okay.
But what you need to do is go through all of the information and see what you can insert into that table.
I would agree. Go through it, and then as you're going through it as best you can, at the end, then compare it to the solution. And then if they don't jive, then bring it back to the next session or bring it back and work it through with your mentoring group.
And one thing I wanted to point out, I think, Harry, when you shared that populated version of that chart, there was a total, I think on the first line, it was like 10,000. As we went across that first row, that's actually thousands of dollars. I don't think it was resources. It added up to 10, which was the total 10,000.
Right.
Just so,
right.
It's dollars instead of resources. So I think that could be confusing too.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Why am I not able to share that?
And it looks like the S-curve activity, that's a lot more straightforward. But I think this is our first time through this. So we can definitely take back the concerns. I can definitely understand where that's confusing when they have the K down and some of these are, the measurement is not in terms of money.
Okay, I have a question. As for the exam content, you said it was out on the PMI site. Do you know kind of where it is?
Yeah,
how do I get
I can. Yep. Let's see.
It's on the student manual, PMI choice. You click on student manual, and it's one of the options is what they're going over. There's two of them.
Okay, you said student manual. I'll just try to get out there. Let me get back out there.
Yeah.
I think it's under PMI PMI auto authorized PMP exam prep choice online. That's the heading.
Okay.
I think, or it could be the other link. Don't quote me on that.
Hey, Harry, do you want me to share my screen and so we can see like the student view of where we're looking to navigate to? Would that help?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, let me share my screen here. Let's see here. Okay. I'll just grab where we want to go here, not my whole screen. Okay. All right. Hopefully in a second. Okay. Hopefully I'm sharing my screen. So, and this will be redundant for some of us. So when we got the student bundle, we paid for it, through whatever it was, and Brian sent us the link. So this is the link that was sent to us, and then it was initially you had to set up a password and everything. So this is that PMI choice or whatever we've been talking about. So if we go into there and log in, I think it'll just log me in without a password because I've already been in it. So let me log in. Okay, sorry for the slowness there, but I think Okay, so you'll see your courses, and we've all signed up for this PMI authorized exam prep course. So if you click on that, you'll see a bunch of different options will come up. And under student manual, if you click on that, the document that everyone has been referring to so far tonight is this second one, the PMP exam prep student PDF. And let me open this. Will probably take a few seconds to open.
It's basically your slides just in PDF form.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm not sure that everybody knows how we're tracking this, though, or mapping to it. So we did lesson 1 before, the high-performing team, so now we're in lesson 2. I think tonight we covered up through topic C, plan and manage your budget resources.
Yeah,
so
that's correct.
One thing that's a little confusing to me is we have 5 of these sessions for starting a project. I think they end around the beginning of April. How do we know which topics map to each section? Like Monday we did A and B.
Yeah.
Today we did C. How do we know in the coming sessions, are we doing D and E? Are we doing just D? You know, how do we know what maps? I mean, I know we're doing all of them in the 5 sessions that we have, but do we have any way of knowing how they map per session? Like, are we doing 1 topic, 2 topics, 5 topics?
Yep. What you do is go to, and the links should be in
the meeting invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're talking about this
class
wiki
schedule
here.
is on this page. Works now. Here, let me drag this across.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to where it was. Okay, you have to take sharing back, Harry, if you're gonna show it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Class schedule.
Yep.
Take a look here. Come to here, PMP, February to April. Okay. So this is what's going to be covered.
Yeah, and that's what I was mapping to. My question with that was, I see we have 5 sessions of starting the project. Do we know how those topics A through H, I think, or A through I map to those? Don't think it's on there, so.
Not directly. They're on the slides themselves. It'll tell you what maps into that session.
Right, yeah, I noticed it on your first slide tonight,
Yeah.
Yeah, the first couple of weeks they put it on the wiki, and they told us what PMBOK chapters sections to study and which part of the handbook to study, but they haven't updated the wiki since week 3. So we're just kind of winging it every week, trying to figure out what we're supposed to go reference to.
Yeah, I know.
Right. Yeah. We'll take that back, because I know that was a concern starting yesterday, I think, with Terry, and then I looked today as well. So we'll make sure. I do believe I got an out-of-office message from Brian, so that may be the case. Maybe he's the only one who can make those updates.
We'll at least pass it along.
The other instructors, like last week, they were able to go to the Excel sheet that you guys have on your share drive for the trainers. They were able to get us the information, and we could snap a picture of it.
You want that?
Yes, I would love it.
There you go. That was today.
Okay, we got that. Do you have the one for Monday?
Yeah, I can get you the ones for Monday.
I mean, will this be available to every one of us so we can look ahead of time?
Unfortunately, no. This is on a shared drive.
And this is for next week. This that you're showing right now.
This is what we covered today.
That's today.
Oh, that's today. That's today. Do you have next
That
week?
was today. Yeah, hold on. I'm going to get Mondays first.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll go to next week. This is starting the project part 1.
By the way, Terry Kidd did send out something for Monday's class and Wednesday's class to a large distribution, which included.
I got that. Yeah.
Okay, this was for Monday.
Yeah, Terry sent out the email that helped me find out what to study for tonight's class. What about for next Monday, the 29th?
Well, we're going to bring that up here in just a couple of seconds.
Okay, thanks.
We did part 2 today, and what'll be coming up is part 3. There you go. So we'll be talking about PMBOK Guide Chapter 6, Plan Schedule Management, define activities, sequence the activities, then estimate activity durations, and develop a schedule.
And that's.
Thank you very much.
You said that this is Monday. You said
Monday.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry, what about the previous one? Which day was that? The one with chapter 5, I believe?
Chapter 5.
Okay, which class is this? This is for this coming Monday, the 29th, or what is this one for?
This was last Monday, 22nd, part 1, because it says part 1 in cell B2.
The one after this one that was just shown, it said part 3. Was there a part 2 that we're missing?
That was today. We showed that.
Yeah, the one that you said was for Monday said part 3.
That's the one for the 29th, the coming Monday, right?
Right.
Is that what we use on Monday for Wednesday? Sorry, I'm confused by these right now.
No.
Part 3 is Monday the 29th.
Yep.
Okay, is that the reading that we do on the 29th to prepare for Wednesday, though?
No, this is what you read over the weekend for next Monday.
Okay.
Okay. So this is part 3. Now go back to the web page. You can see that this is part 2 that we just did today. All right. So part 2, part 3 will be next Monday.
Can we have the one on the Wednesday as well? You know, usually the weekend for us, so we have more, at least for myself, I'm speaking for myself, we have more time to read it than during the week because we're bombarded with other things as well. So
I understand. I don't have it for part 4. Yeah, let's see. I don't have the PMBOK guide. Yeah, let me see. This is just taking a huge amount of time to open up this PowerPoint. Yeah, the only thing we have are the ECO tasks for that. I don't have any mapping to the PMBOK guide. That ended here. Now, the good thing is, person who was doing that is Matt. So ask your instructor on Monday.
At the onset of tonight's session, weren't we supposed to cover the schedule too? Project schedule section or task 6?
No, that's for Monday. He showed.
It was for Monday.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, because here. See, this is
right, but go back to your deck
part 3.
Okay.
All right. I'll go back to the deck.
Plan and manage schedule. Okay. I thought we were going through B today. All right.
Okay. There's the mapping for last Monday. Here's today. We'd like to get feedback from people once they've taken the exam to let us know, how well the topics were covered in these prep seminars. Now, the thing is that these slides we're going through are provided by PMI. So every prep course that exists right now, authorized prep course, uses the same slide deck. It doesn't matter whether it's an in-person class, whether it's a class like this. Whether it's one you pay $130 some for, whether it's one you pay $1,500 for, they all use the same deck. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Yes, real quick. The hours, are they going to be updated? The last one that I have on there, I think is like from the 10th.
Oh, the class attendance?
Yep.
Yeah, I think Brian does those. And if he's been out of office, it may take until first part of next week. I'd suggest checking back on Tuesday. And if it hasn't been done by then, send them a note.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like Brian returns on the 5th.
Okay. Ooh. He was out for 2 weeks. All right, he's not going to be doing it next week, that's for sure. All right, you might need to give him until the following week. Hey, really, I mean, this is an all-volunteer organization.
Sure.
Once you've taken and passed your PMP, please volunteer.
Absolutely.
We can use a lot of help. Now, seriously, mentors, instructors, people just helping with updating records like this. It's they're really just a handful of people who do this. So any assistance will be extremely welcome. Anything else? All right. Give you back about almost 11 minutes then.
Thanks, Harry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for attending tonight.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the night.
Bye.